that's one of the things I would encourage new people to do is take a year off, focus on underwriting, and make your connections with brokers, get every investment or every broker package you can, take the T12 and the rent roll, underwrite the deal to the best of your abilities, go tour the deal, go through the whole charade, but make sure you're upfront with the broker and tell him, hey, look, I'm not a qualified buyer for this deal. I'm learning. And I think that honesty would help you more than hurt you. I think if you were to try and pretend to be something you're not and say, I have a chance at buying this deal, it's going to hurt your reputation.
This is episode number 03 of the Multifamily Success Stories podcast. Would you like to turn vacant units into cash and earn up to 3 times more per door without having to do any extra work yourself? We offer fully managed short-term rental solutions for multifamily investors. Go to managedbylux.com for more information.
Hey, this is John Bell
And Julian Sage.
and welcome to the Multifamily Success Stories podcast. This is a show where we talk to multifamily investors about their journeys and starting and growing their real estate empires.
Our goal is that you'll be able to walk away not only inspired, but with practical information to help you in your real estate journey.
Since we are a new show, please go over to iTunes and leave us a review and let us know what you enjoy.
And if you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, the Multifamily Success Network, to connect with the community. Hey, what is up, deal makers? Julian Sage here, and I hope you are enjoying this show. This is something that we are doing, like we said, once a week. We are interviewing some real experts in the space. So if you are finding value, please go on over to iTunes or Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen. Leave us a review, as that greatly supports the show. Since this is a new show, the more reviews, the better, because that helps us be able to get more listeners, and getting more listeners and hearing more feedback from everybody that is listening will help us to better improve the show. So if there's anything that you want us to do, please let us know. In this episode, we had the honor of speaking with Joseph Bramante. Joseph is the co-founder and CEO of TriArc Real Estate Partners, a wholly integrated multifamily investment company. Joseph purchased his first multifamily property in the U.S. in 2011, sight unseen, while working as the business team lead for ExxonMobil in Papua New Guinea. Today, along with his business partners, he's grown a portfolio of over 1,100 units, increasing his NOI, or net operating income, by over 80% on average within the first 48 months post-acquisition. In this episode, Joseph shares his story of just starting off in multifamily investing, again, with that first property, and a lot of the trials and tribulations he had to experience picking up his first property. There's a lot that he learned along the way from that first property, and then even the second, so on. It seems like Joseph really struggled along the way, and I feel like this is a very good episode that shows you some of the realities that multifamily investing is not just purchasing a property, putting in some light renovations, and then that's it, and then you make a profit. This can be a very challenging business, and there's a lot of obstacles and roadblocks that you may face along your journey, and Joseph's story is a perfect example of that. If you like my show notes for this episode, go to multifsuccess.com/EP06. Or if you like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to multifsuccess.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back, deal makers, to another episode of Multifamily Success Stories. In this episode, we have the special honor of speaking with Joseph Bramante. Joseph, would you please introduce yourself to the deal maker community? Let them know who you are and what inspired you to get into multifamily investing.
Hey, everybody, I'm Joseph Bramante, CEO of TriArc Real Estate Partners. I got into multifamily really by accident. I was originally trying to buy 80 foreclosed houses, and while living overseas in Papua New Guinea, because that's what my managers were doing, they're buying foreclosed houses. This is 2010. And so I was trying to buy these houses, and bank after bank kept laughing at me because I was trying to get a loan for $3 million to buy them all at once. And I would send all these lenders my beautiful takedown spreadsheet for how I was going to do it over a 2-year period. And it probably would have failed on its face, but that's another story. So finally, one lender told me just to go buy an 80-unit apartment complex. So I couldn't afford an 80-unit apartment complex, but I could afford a 26-unit apartment complex. So I read a few books, and sure enough, all the books said, houses are great. Percentage-wise, you'll make a higher return, but the volume is in multifamily. The real money is in multifamily. So at the time, I had the money to get into apartments. I didn't need a syndicate. It was me and another employee. We put our money together. We bought a deal. And that first deal really put us through the grinder. We did more things on that one deal than many syndicators will do on 10 deals. We had almost went bankrupt on it. And that was kind of how, I spent 3 years on one deal, one small 26 unit deal. And that was kind of the launch of our company after the success of that one deal.
Wow, there's a lot going on in that story. So I feel like we have to kind of deconstruct that, break it apart. I guess my first question would be, what led you to being in Papua New Guinea, looking for 80, homes that you could, purchase.
I'm an engineer by trade, civil engineer, and I got graduated top of my class, got a job with Exxon right out of college. Was a poor college student like most engineers are, and went to work 2 weeks after graduating, and was moved to Houston for Exxon, and was in Houston originally for about 9 months, and saw an opportunity to take an assignment overseas to Papua New Guinea. It was their highest paying assignment. So when you're with an oil company, you have your base pay, and then you have hardship pay and cost of living adjustments depending on what country you're living in and what kind of rating. So this was the highest hardship assignment that they offered. I was a young engineer making low six figures, and went into making a very healthy six figures all of a sudden, and I was quickly able to pay off all my maxed out credit cards and student loans and every other debt. So I was for a while debt free, and got to experience other cultures. I lived for a year in Australia and then 2 years in Papua New Guinea, while the project went from initial front end design to full funding within the company. Once the project was officially funded, which I guess in real estate terms would be once you close on a project and it gets fully funded, I moved in country and we started building it. So that was why I was in Papua New Guinea. It was a interesting place. It was like, just imagine pulling out a copy of National Geographic magazine. It was just like that. There's people in tribal gear, except with cell phones. It was the most ironic thing to see a guy in full tribal gear pull out a Nokia phone. But it happened on a regular basis, and it was quite the experience. So from one end, it was great because I was making all this money. But then on the other end, I couldn't spend it. There was nothing to spend the money on. I was living there. I was very restricted as far as what Exxon allowed us to do. There were only a certain number of bars and restaurants and places that we could actually go. We weren't allowed to drive. We had drivers who took us everywhere. So that's how they controlled where we went, because the drivers literally wouldn't take us to places we weren't allowed to go to. And, it was a malaria zone. So we had to wear, special clothing and take malaria pills every day and all this fun stuff. So anyway, I had a lot of free time. I'd finish my job around 7 and I'd go home. TV was crap. The internet was really slow. iPhones were still a new thing, but there was really no data. The cell phone data we had was super slow, so you couldn't really do anything. You were just there. And so you found hobbies. And I found books, and I was reading books, and all my managers, many of them were rotators. So they would go home for 4 weeks and then would come back to the job site for 4 weeks. And I would see, they would, kind of give us an update on the mainland. Let us know how things are going back in America. And they always tended to have some new property that they had purchased because, this was 2010, 2011. Everything was foreclosed. People were buying houses for nothing. And one manager in particular would buy all these really crappy houses, and I never understood it. But I knew he was a smart guy. I knew he knew what he was doing. So I looked into it, and that's how I kind of got into trying to buy 80 of these houses, and then kind of took a pivot to apartments after, one of the lenders told us to kind of go into multifamily. So we looked into it. I kind of downloaded a bunch of ebooks and self-taught myself multifamily. I got this kind of 30,000 foot education on apartments from books that are meant to teach you kind of nationwide. And I think that's what's true with books and even these podcasts. Everything that you're going to hear is really broad and very, multifamily and real estate in general is very localized and it's very specific to your market. And there's a lot of things, even just closing a deal in one market compared to the other, there's going to be things that are different. Contracts will be different. Just things will be different. And so anyway, I had this 30,000 foot education. I was talking to brokers in Houston, and the funny thing, or the good thing for me, is that the time zones worked out perfect. So I can work my day as normal, and then around 5 or 6 o'clock my time in Papua New Guinea was 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning Houston time. So I would finish my normal day at Exxon, and I'd start my second job and just work until midnight, 1 a.m. And I did that for over a year while I was trying to get into multifamily. So that was kind of how I got the first deal going. I read these books, called a bunch of brokers, partnered with the local employee. I convinced him that I knew what I was doing when I really didn't. And we both went in 50-50 on a small 26 unit apartment complex. And, we thought it was the easiest thing to do. Once we closed on it, we got to the closing table, we owned it. We're like, man, that was super easy. We were just giving ourselves high fives and patting ourselves on the backs, thinking that, we were just, the next Donald Trumps or something of multifamily. It was just, watch out, here we come. And then reality set in about 6 months in, and all the things that we didn't do correctly came to bear rather quickly for us. So I guess for starters, the first thing was is managing the vacancy. So we had hired a property manager who was not multifamily specific. He was a single family property manager, and he was making his debut into multifamily on our deal. This is his first ever deal. And, from the outside looking in, if you don't have a lot of experience, you might think, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's houses, small apartment complexes. It's all the same, right? You're taking leases, you're renting units. It's not the same. And so we get into this deal and he's managing it. And next thing you know, we're at 85% occupied, and all the residents had moved next door to the seller's neighboring property. So the situation is, this seller who was retiring, he owned two properties next to each other that were divided by a single street. We couldn't afford both of them, but we could afford the smaller one. So we took down the smaller one. And one of the things that happens whenever you take over a property is you have to give notice to all the residents that you're the new owner and you're the new manager company. And sometimes that leads to people moving out. They get spooked. They think that rents are going to get bumped, or, whatever. Who knows what they think. But typically what happens is you tend to have just a little dip in occupancy. And we had a big dip. And on smaller properties, you feel it more so than on larger properties. It was only 4 people that moved out, but 4 people made up 15% of our occupancy. So they moved next door to the sellers at other units. And so we were there instantly, kind of vacant 15%. But we weren't initially phased by it because we knew we were going to do a renovation. So we just took the opportunity to go ahead and renovate those 4 units first. So we're in there, we're doing our rehab, we're, self-GC in the deal. We've got all these subs that are giving us bids. We're, trying to do our Exxon thing to the project and apply all these project management principles that we've learned. And it was a real crapshoot with what was going on, because it was, you're used to subcontractors they'll give you a PO, they'll give you a simple invoice. And here we were trying to, jam our 30-page contract down their throat. And it just wasn't working out so well. Having to explain change orders and liquidated damages to contractors or subs, it just wasn't going to happen. So anyway, we get down the road, we finally get some subs in, we're doing a rehab, and we've got our property manager, who, of course, has some sort of side business where they're doing high-end single-family houses. which is a completely different model to multifamily. You don't want anything high end when you're doing rehabs. It's, you're not spending, $100 on a faucet. You're spending, $20. So it was a completely different kind of construction business he was in, and was, trying to GC our deal. And he was in parts. He was we were both kind of GCing it. But then we ended up taking over because he was just doing a crap job. And one of the things he ended up doing, which wasn't anything wrong, I'm just saying, but he ended up pulling a permit to do the central AC to get installed, which is what you're supposed to do. And as part of that permitting process, we had to submit an environmental report. And because we didn't know what the heck we were doing at due diligence, when we closed on it, we didn't do an environmental. And also because the lender wasn't a traditional multifamily lender, so they didn't even think to ask us to get an environmental report. We just got a PCA, property condition assessment. And that was it. So we get a brand new environmental. And of course, the thing comes back positive for asbestos. And I'm in the oil industry. We know very well the dangers of asbestos and all the risk associated with it and the do's and don'ts. And so immediately, after a few choice curse words, my next email was to send all the contractors notice to stop work immediately, get off the site. We'll contact them in the future when we're ready to continue. So we dealt with that initial blow, and so we were there kind of dead in the water. We had 4 units that were not only vacant, but were untouchable because they were now, sheetrock was down, and it was a contaminated site. And so we had to professionally get at least those at a minimum abated. So, we bring in the environmentalist and the guys who do the abatement, and it's every abatement guy's wet dream, to be in a situation where they got to do these abatements, and they're looking at this and they're seeing just dollar signs, right? And so these guys, they give us a bid, and it was like almost $100,000 for 26 units to get the whole thing abated. And of course, they're going in there and they're doing a point test, which is where you take little triangles of the paint and you get it tested. And we were just barely over the legal limit. Like the legal limit was like 2% or 0.2%, something like that. And we were like 0.1% higher than we should have been. So anyway, they go in and they're like, all right, well, you got to abate all this. So they give us a bid to abate every piece of drywall. And that doesn't work, right? So we couldn't afford to do that. So we got some other opinions. And what we ended up doing was we got a bid to do just the wet areas. So not all of the drywall, but just the areas that had plumbing behind it that we were going to get into in the future. But that was a discovery or a conclusion we made further on the road. So anyway, so here we are at the moment. Everybody's been sent home. We know we got asbestos. It's probably month 3 of ownership. So we're off to a great start. And then around month 4, I get notice that the insurance that we had purchased through a broker was fraudulent. So the broker who we hired to buy insurance for us, he had bought it from some company that turned out to be not real. They didn't exist. So, and his brokerage company was suing that other company to try and get our money back, which we did eventually get our money back. However, it was 2 years later. And for those of you who live in the South, know, or at least in areas that get hurricanes, we were in hurricane season. So it's extremely difficult when you own a property that you already own that finds itself in a situation where it doesn't have insurance to then get insurance. It's normal to get insurance on acquisition. That's completely okay. But if you were to say forget to pay your insurance or not renew, and then you go to try and get insurance again after a gap in coverage, it's a very painful process. It can be very expensive. You don't get the best quotes. And then also we were in hurricane season, so it was a double whammy for the pricing. So they were with insurance. And then around month 5 or 6, I get notice that I'm being let go from Exxon. So our property is already negative cash flowing, and the only thing keeping us alive and keeping our ego kind of going. It's like, okay, well, we still got our jobs, right? And this was back when oil was at 120 a barrel. Exxon was the biggest company in the world. So it was the equivalent of working for like Google back then. So we were comfortable. We weren't worried, and we had no fears of this property. I mean, we were in a bad situation, right? Asbestos, negative cash flowing, 4 units down, no insurance, but still we were confident that we were going to figure it out. And then I lost my job, and then all of a sudden that confidence just evaporated, and I was in a pretty bad situation. Now we just had one partner who worked for Exxon and was able to kind of cover us. And I was now personally, I was having to save all my money and not spend anything. So I moved in, got roommates, completely cut all my expenses down as much as I could. And, but not defeated. The next day, I'm joining a local real estate group. I spent 10 grand to join this group after I'd just gotten laid off, because I knew I wasn't really in a position to question, like, man, that's 10 grand seems like a lot to join a group. It was take my money and help me because I'm in a really bad situation. So I joined this group, and unfortunately, they didn't have much good advice for me. Everybody from the CEO of the group down told me to sell the property and take a loss, which would have been bad for 2 reasons. One, all the money that I'd made for the last 5 years at Exxon, I'd put into that project. So I would have basically lost everything I'd done for the last 5 years and would have really been starting over. And then 2, it's been very hard to raise money for a future deal if I had a negative track record. Like, who in their right mind is going to give me money if I personally lost over $100,000 on my first deal right out of the gate? It's not going to happen. So I had to figure out a way. And luckily, I'd met my current partner there. At the time, she was a manager company. She was a fee manager and for multifamily. And I'd hired her initially just to replace the goofball I'd hired who was doing single family. She'd been doing it for, at the time, 25 years and had managed, 30 some odd thousand units already. So she had tons of experience. And she said, we're in a great location. That's the one thing I did right. I got in a great location, that we had the opportunity here to do a big renovation on this property and turn the whole thing around, which, I'm a first time buyer. I don't really have any business doing a huge renovation. I was just trying to, keep it under like $5,000 a door. And she was, once we scoped out everything, it was like $30,000 a door for this new big renovation. But, we checked all the rent comps, and we didn't really have any good ones at the time. So we were using a lot of single family rent comps to justify it. But it all on paper seemed to work, right? We can justify the rents. So we came up with a plan. We got the whole project scoped out. We got a proper lender who did multifamily, and we did a full recourse bridge loan. I cashed out my 401k and used that as additional collateral to secure this new bridge loan. So now I've literally got everything, all my cash, all my savings from Exxon into this one deal. And we've just doubled down, went all in on this one deal and said, look, this is either going to work or it's not going to work. Either way, I'm starting over. If it doesn't work, I had to start over anyway. If it does work, then I'm a hero. So I just rolled the dice, which wasn't really rolling the dice at that time because we had gotten additional education. We had an expert telling us it could work. So it wasn't as much of a gamble as the first acquisition. It's the first time we bought it was. And then right when we refinanced, it wasn't really a bad thing. It was just like, it was an indication, just the timing of everything we were doing was just spot on. So when you have a loan on a property, especially when it's recourse, you're getting annual checkups from your lender, and you got to provide them your updated personal financials, your updated rent roll, and your updated T12 for the property. Well, property was negative cash flowing. My financials were crap because I had no job. And the rent roll would have showed a very low occupancy, 85% occupancy. So we'd gotten that letter in the mail 2 weeks before we were set to close at the refi. And I'll tell you what, if everything hadn't have happened exactly as it did, we were headed towards bankruptcy because the lender would have saw the situation we were in. They would have forced us to sell the property or do any number of things. But either way, it would have not been good for us. So luckily, we got the refi in place, closed, paid off the other lender, and we start on this monster $30,000 per door renovation. Step one, we vacate the property because it's really not a good look to have guys in hazmat suits walking around while you've got residents right next door. So we avoided all liability as the advice of just common sense and the advice of our attorneys. We're like, look, you'll probably be okay, but let's just avoid all of the frivolous lawsuits and discoveries and whatnot, and just vacate the whole thing. Once it's empty, then you can start. So we vacate it, start the abatement. Once they've done the abatement, then we bring in the GC and we start to work on renovating these units. And it went pretty quickly. 9 months, we did all 26 units. It took about 2 months to do the abatement. So really it was 7 months for all 26 units, a complete gut. And that's because all the units were vacant, so they could work 24/7, no issues with noise, no issues with nothing. And it was stressful though, because for 9 months, we're managing this process. We're continuing to do draws. We're spending down, and every month I'm getting further and further in debt on a full recourse loan. And if this doesn't work, I've just really I'm screwed. Like for life, I'm screwed. I'm going to be paying down this loan for the rest of my life. And so luckily it worked, right? So we turn the lights on, we get the whole thing ready to lease up. We start leasing, and the leases are hitting right on target. And I tell you what, it was the most stressful 9 months, because for that whole time, you're just kind of flying by instruments, right? You can't see anything. It's all pitch black. You're just looking at numbers. You're looking at, occupancies, and you're for neighboring areas, looking at what market rents are. You're keeping track of all that. We're managing the rehab. And when it starts leasing and everything starts kind of falling in place like it should, and you get the NOI, and then you get that appraisal from the appraiser, and then you get even better the refi loan amount from your lender. It was just incredible, And when that money actually hit our account, it was probably one of the happiest days of my life. So just because of so much stress, right? You were spending so much was involved. There's a 3-year process on this one deal that really took me through the ringer. And we came out the other end against all odds. And we not only got our money back, we doubled our money. We still own it today. We're about to scrape it and redevelop it again. And, by the time it's all said and done, we'll have probably 5-6x our money from what we originally put in, or if not more. So so that was how I got my start. That was my first deal. And of course the market had a lot to play into that. We bought it at a 10 cap. We refinanced out at a 6 cap. So while we did triple the NOI, that cap rate just was a very, very big cherry on top.
Wow. That story was probably the most succinct and really exciting story. Like I was like engaged. Like that could be honestly like a movie, almost a multifamily success movie. But wow, one of the things, like how many more times do you think like you could have had like an obstacle thrown in front of you and still been able to make it to the end? Like, do you think like if there was like one more thing that maybe like kind of tripped you up towards the end, like that would have been it? Or did like all the stars align, which allowed you to be able to, finish and, actually make this a profitable situation?
I don't know, because for that whole 9 months, I feel like we kept hitting obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, albeit, from adding washer and dryer, and then, figuring out that we had to add an additional breaker to the units to support the electric load, to the sewer line being at 150 feet of sewer line we had to replace. We kept discovering things as they kind of went along. We had a lot of termite damage. We had an invasion of bees at one time where we had a unit that was completely turned and ready, but it was sitting vacant, and freaking bees took up nests in the unit. And we had to literally cut out the sheetrock in the wall, get an exterminator and fog the unit or whatever they do and get rid of the damn bees. But it's just that property for a while just it fought us, it kept hitting us with different jabs and we had vandalism. Vandalism is a weird thing. Vandalism is normally a bad thing for us. It kind of helped us because we knew we were adding washer and dryer, and we were like, man, we had a laundromat on site. We're like, what are we going to do with these washing machines? And then one day they're just gone. Somebody had stole them. So it kind of solved that problem for us. They had stripped all the copper out, I guess, or whatever they do with washer and dryers. But it was a stressful property. And that said, one of the things that personally about me is you just got to have confidence. And I've had confidence in just our abilities that no matter what situation we're in, we'll figure out an answer. We'll figure out a solution. We'll be okay. And I think if you're going to be in this industry, you've got to have that same confidence to get in there and just have the confidence in your own ability to handle whatever gets thrown your way. Because there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're not going to be able to, especially when you're starting out. There's even more stuff when you're starting out than when you've been doing it for 10 years like myself that gets thrown at you that you weren't expecting. And you just got to know that you can figure it out in the fly and not let it take you down.
So it sounds like you built a big list, a very long list of lessons learned. How did the second deal go with all of that information to kind of put into it?
Yeah, the second deal we didn't make those same mistakes on the second deal, but we made new mistakes. And I'd say for us, the first couple of deals, we did big rehabs. It was first deal was a $30,000 per door. The second deal was a $22,000. The third deal was $18,000. So we just right back to back did 3 big value adds. And it wasn't until the fourth deal that we did a normal $7,000 a door rehab. So it was just, in every deal, the second deal, we made some errors on the contracting side. That was now every one of our deals has a built-in extension option. We didn't do that on the second one. We came in, the second one was a property that was on the light rail, which is the public transit system here in Houston. It was a newly built light rail. They built it 3 months prior to we purchasing the property. And we came in hard and high. So we came with a heavy offer at the time and with hard money, and just enticed the seller to just put it under contract for us. And then he found out that he didn't have a CO on that deal. And we just kept giving him extension after extension until he finally got his COs, his certificate of occupancy. And then it was literally about 4 months of extensions we granted. And then once he finally got his CO, he didn't return the favor to us. He just said, I got the CO, you got 30 days to close. And it's extremely difficult to get everything back up and going again after 4 months of silence, to get the lenders back in gear, to get your investors back in gear, to get your own self back in gear to close on that deal within that short period of time. And so we ended up pivoting 2 weeks prior to close to a hard money lender. We closed the deal, but that had the unfortunate side effect of freezing our ability to do any kind of rehab. That, at least with that particular lender, we weren't allowed to update the property. We just had to sit on it for a minimum of 1 year, and then we could refi them out into a traditional bridge lender. So that was our lessons on that second deal. But we went big for it. We had a property that's on a light rail that as of right now, we're redeveloping it. We just went to the architect's office. We got renderings ready. So we're getting ready to scrape that whole property, which was always the plan, and put, I think it's a 200 unit mid-rise right now. So anyway, that deal was tricky in that the units were small. So, and we didn't want to go as heavy as we did on the first deal, because we knew that it was just it was a covered land play. We knew we were going to scrape and redevelop eventually, or sell it to a developer. And so we were very sensitive to over renovating, and only doing what we had to do. So the roof was just a regular tar roof that we replaced it with. We didn't do TPO because TPO is too much for what we needed. We just needed 10 years. So we did like a regular tar roof. We did resurfaced everything instead of putting granite. And we did kind of cheaper amenities and cheaper upgrades to the units. But they still look nice. We still added ACs and stuff like that. So we did not add a washer and dryer, but that was mostly because they were smaller. So we didn't learn as many lessons on the value add side as we did on the first one, but we still did learn lessons. I mean, even to this day, we're doing a 37,000 per door renovation right now across 220 units. It's $8.3 million rehab. And on this one, this is a monster. I mean, I felt prepared because I'd done a 30 and a 22 and an 18. I've done everything on different projects, but to have everything combined on this one plus some, it's challenging. And so that's what I say when you're going to be in industry, you're always learning something. Keep a register of your lessons. Like I legitimately have a lessons learned file that I keep that is categorized so that I can go back to, as I'm doing a new property, and say, okay, on these scopes I'm doing, let me look at them. Okay, well, these are my lessons for these scopes from previous properties. And that was a technique that I learned at Exxon. They've got a full lessons learned register from all the projects that they've done over their 100 years or however many long they've been in business. And you're able to kind of not repeat mistakes.
You know, Joseph, I mean, you're obviously a really smart guy, but you kept on hitting these obstacles along the way. Was this because of lack of knowledge, prior to going into these deals, or was it just like you don't know until you acquire the property that all of these things are going to happen?
Yeah, you just don't know. With big value add, it's impossible to see behind the walls. And like for our 37,000 per door renovation we're doing, we've got rotten joists. On that one, we got, unfortunately, and fortunately, so it flooded we had a flash flooding event in Houston 9 hours after we closed that nobody saw coming. It just appeared and disappeared, and everybody knows Houston's got a flooding issue. So luckily we closed, we had flood insurance. We just found out the other day that our claim was approved. So that's helpful. But that said, we went in and we had to strip down these units 18 inches up, get the sheetrock out. And when we did that, we saw that, man, there's a lot of units. There's a lot of studs that's just not touching the concrete. Like there's no, over the years, it's been rotten and worn out. And, those things happen, especially in the wet areas. But with those big rehabs, the upside to them is that you've got so much money behind you on the rehab that little things like that are easily absorbed. And also you've got a contingency line item. So we've got contingency line items on every one of our rehabs, and it's intentionally meant to cover those unforeseen things that you cannot predict. Even Exxon, when we did our projects, would have 10 to 12% contingencies on these $20 billion projects, because even with all their years of experience and all these engineers working for the company, there's still things that come up that you just can't predict, that are unique to every property. And that's what you have a contingency line item for. So as long as you structure it correctly, you'll be okay. And that's what we've done on all of our deals, is we've structured it so that we've got this nice contingency that really protects us. And then you do different techniques. You can do de-scoping, for example. So say you do have good contingency, but for whatever reason, you run out of money. You've burned through all the contingency. Well, at that point, then you're looking at de-scoping, where maybe you don't do a few scopes, or maybe you do less units. You don't do all the units. You just do maybe 80% of the units in order to do the units that you do have completely. So no, I don't think that it's any execution issues or anything like that. I think it's just the nature of the beast. And as you get into these big rehabs, you guys will discover for yourself that there's a lot of unknowns, and it's impossible to predict everything that could possibly happen.
During that time, what were you reading? Who were you following? Were you digesting just anybody else that could definitely help you through all those struggles?
Yeah, I I really spent uh, a lot of time with CCIM. So the first 6 months after my layoff from Exxon, I threw myself at CCIM and I got the formal education. I like that group because it's literally classroom style. You sit down, you've got instructors, you've got tests at the end. And when you've done all your courses and you've gotten a certain level of experience, you end up getting your CSAM accreditation, which I would have mine by now if not for COVID. So hopefully I'll be able to apply in August and get to take the test. But regardless, so that's what I was doing initially when I first got started. And then I've taken just numerous other courses. I've got over 40 hours of coursework I've taken through CCAM and others just to continually improve, continually get better at the underwriting, and then also just better as a leader. I was a student of Dan Sullivan, was strategic coach. So I did that for 3 years to help really with our business and structuring and how we as a business operate. And then now I'm a member of EO, which is Entrepreneur Organization. So I've got a forum that I'm a member of, and it's just 10 other business owners, and we that are kind of industry. I'm the only multifamily guy at the table, and we're all just talking about our problems and helping each other. And from the perspective of other industries, which I really like. And then now I'm working on getting my GMAT to go back to school and get my EMBA and really help grow our company from that perspective. But to answer your question, specific to multifamily and the underwriting, CCIM was that kind of the number one thing for me as far as the education, the underwriting goes.
Where do you see education kind of moving forward? Because you said that you're still a student, you're still student of just learning as new obstacles come up, but you're actively going out there and trying to get continuing education. Where does that kind of fit into like multifamily investing? Because probably when a lot of people first get into this, they think like, oh, I'll purchase a property, I'll put $7,000 into it, into each unit, and then be able to make a whole lot of money off of it. But it seems like it's a lot more than that. Like there's construction, there's management, and raising capital. Where does education fit into where you're going with your company?
Yeah, well, for me, it's very important, and it's very important because for us, we're not just trying to do kind of I don't want to say the word mom and pop, but we're not trying to just do a small business type syndication company. We're trying to form and go kind of more institutional, eventually form a REIT, and so go very big. Our goal is to get 20,000 units, and I understand and recognize that I'm not going to be the same person I am today that I will be when we own 20,000 units. It's a completely different skill set that I have to have. And I am myself, like we just hired a VP of acquisitions. I'm not doing any more underwriting. I mean, I'm still going to help and contribute, but my role within the company just within the last month has changed, that I'm not personally underwriting deals anymore. We're growing, we're adding team members, and we're kind of delegating to people to kind of help with the overall goal, with the overall objective of hitting 20,000 units. So for me, it's very important to continue my education, because as I go into different roles, more specialized roles, and as my position matures and as I mature, and as our company grows, I need to be able to kind of meet the standard, and fulfill the requirements of the position I'm in. And education is key, and I think everybody does that. Even the top guys, even the CEOs of all the companies, are always continuing to get education and coaching to always improve, because there's always that, it's kind of like football, it's a game of inches. So we're always trying to get that one little extra inch to improve ourselves. And that's also just in the nature of who we are as leaders. And we're just super competitive, but against ourselves. Like, you just want to be better. You want to be the best version that you can be. And so that's why I continue my education, so that I can continue to be better at what I'm doing.
What would you say is the most challenging part of this business for yourself? Like, what are some of the weaknesses that you see in yourself that make this business especially challenging?
Some of the weaknesses that I see in myself that make this business especially challenging is, um, right now the phase of where we're at now is doing the syndication route. In the past, I was very fortunate. We had a very good following of investors, and we still do, but we've grown, and so our deal size and our equity raises have grown quite significantly. And now we're raising $12 million for a deal right now. And so I'm having to get better and better at the kind of the sales side of the industry and the marketing side. I've never really been a big marketer, so to speak. I've always been more of the technical expertise kind of guy and just focused on being technically the best at what I'm doing. But others are really more marketers, and they're really good at marketing their company and talking about or their projects, marketing their projects, and they can just generate tons of equity and capital for their deals because they're just all over the place with their marketing. And not necessarily that their marketing is good or bad or it's indifferent. It doesn't matter how their marketing, how their underwriting is. It's their marketing is so good that they've just generated so much equity that the underwriting could be completely off and it doesn't matter. They'll close the deal. And so that's a kind of weakness for myself, and that I've been so laser focused on hitting the numbers correctly and getting those right that I've lost track of, okay, well, there's a marketing side of this business as well. And so now I'm kind of pivoting, and that's what's happened when I let go of the underwriting altogether and I gave that to our new VP. I'm kind of now stepping into that side and trying to learn about the marketing side of it more and the equity raise side and get better and better at that.
Speaking of syndication, are you guys only open to accredited investors or sophisticated investors as well?
Yeah, we only do accredited. We're 506C. But when I got started, I was doing 506B. So I know what that's about. And I don't even know how to do 506B anymore because one, with COVID, I don't know how you'd really do it. And two, I just haven't done it in so long. I would probably be in violation because I'm so used to using 506C and my vernacular would be all incorrect. So,
What's the biggest mistake that you see new real estate investors doing?
I think that there's an overemphasis on the marketing side, to be honest. And while it's a weakness of my own, I'm very much glad that I spent the time to get the underwriting correct. When I joined that real estate group, one of the things they would say is that you're only one bad deal away from ending your career in multifamily. And I think that's true now more than ever because deals are so tight, cap rates are so tight. And one of the saving graces that we had when we started back in 2011 was that we were in a compressing cap rate environment. So our cap rates went from 10 all the way down to where they are now, which is 5 to 6%. They're not going to keep compressing. If anything, they're on the expansion right now. And if you were to go into deals with just mediocre underwriting and you were to sell an investor on some bogus numbers and you get the money and you close on a deal, that deal could very easily just go upside down and go sideways on you. And so I think that's one of the things I would encourage new people to do is just take a year off, focus on underwriting, and make your connections with brokers, get every investment or every broker package you can, take the T12 and the rent roll, underwrite the deal to the best of your abilities, go tour the deal, go through the whole charade. But make sure you're upfront with the broker and tell him, hey, look, I'm not a qualified buyer for this deal. I'm learning. And I think that honesty would help you more than hurt you. I think if you were to try and pretend to be something you're not and say, I have a chance at buying this deal, it's going to hurt your reputation because they're going on the next deal. They're going to remember, oh, that was so and so who, remember the last deal he said he was a buyer when he really wasn't, and so they're not going to take you seriously on your future deals. But if you're upfront with them and you say, hey, look, I'm not a serious buyer for this deal. I'm just learning. Would you mind touring me on the deal when you have some time? I feel like most brokers would be open to that. And they may not bring the whole team with them like they normally do on a real tour. But I think they're also about relationships. Everybody's about relationships in this industry. And so if you're honest with people and you're trying to learn, do the tour, do the underwriting, do it the best of your abilities, and then follow up with the broker after it closes and say, hey, remember I toured, so many months ago, just following up, what did the property actually sell for? I came up with this value, but I'm trying to see, what it actually sold for. And then so he'll probably tell you that maybe sold for this number and you probably ended up maybe a little bit less, and you got to figure out how to bridge that gap. And so I think that's what I was doing early on, unintentionally. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I was underwriting deals. I was really addicted to the number side of it. And so I would underwrite these deals and just happen to follow up and find out what it traded for. And over the years of doing that, I would figure out the different tips and tricks and ways to just nudge up my purchase price and find the value in these deals. And so that's my biggest recommendation for anybody trying to get in industry. The most important thing for you as a syndicator is to have good underwriting. And so spend the time, learn to underwrite. And if you're not going to do the underwriting, I don't really have good thoughts or bad thoughts, but I know that some people are outsourcing their underwriting. And so I would just make sure that if you're outsourcing the underwriting, that guy is qualified and that he's really good at what he's doing. And I think anybody who's going to offer their service as an underwriter should have been doing this for at least 5 to 10 years, not just somebody who's kind of picking it up as they go. Otherwise, it's always better. Even as a syndicator, you need to know the numbers. And while I may not be underwriting deals going forward, it's important that I know how to underwrite, and so that I can step in and I can, when I'm presented the pro forma from one of our teams about a deal, I can look and make sure it makes sense. Versus if you have no clue or you're not really sure or you're not that strong in the underwriting side, it's very easy to get fed just a bunch of BS about a deal that will never come to fruition.
One of the things that you were saying earlier, which I thought was pretty unique, was about working with the broker and actually kind of seeing what the numbers would actually be after it's sold. In the stock world, that's like paper trading. So it's like you're just using basically like a gimmick account without actual spending money to get your confidence to where you can actually go out and do that deal. Do you think that it would have been better for you rather than jumping in, without knowing really how to swim that well, as opposed to, maybe partnering with someone on that first deal and kind of, having them walk you through?
Yeah, if I had the whole thing to do over again, I would have definitely co-GP'd with somebody who knew what they were doing. So I had a partner, but he was basically a passive investor. And he was working full time. And so it wasn't that he didn't want to contribute, but he was just busy. He was basically the breadwinner of our partnership. He was the one still making money. And so I was a sole GP by myself who had no experience. So if I had to do it all over again, I absolutely would have co-GP with somebody, because while I learned a ton on that first deal and I've exponentially, grown my experience, what I lost was time. And time is the most valuable thing that we all have and that we can't get back. And so if you can partner with somebody and you can, bridge that gap and you can save yourself a lot of time, I always encourage that. And I've applied that same principle to every other position in our company, from our operations to our new VP of acquisitions to our VP of construction. If I wanted to, I could have learned to do operations, construction, or acquisitions. I know how to do acquisitions because that's what I was doing. But I've hired somebody who's been doing this for 20 years, who's on paper better at doing this than I am. And I'm not saying it. I'm always going to want to step in and do it. And I'm always going to think that my underwriting is really good. But I know that on paper, his is really good. And he's been doing it for so long. And I've absolute trust in his ability to get it done. And so I think that's what I would have done. If you can do that starting out, if you can go into a deal and you can be fortunate enough to co-GP with people who are a lot more experienced than you, it'll only benefit you.
And where do you see the most challenging part of scaling this business now from, those first few properties that you were kind of, managing mostly by yourself or with another investor to where, now you have a whole team that you're building out. What do you find the most challenging part of growing a multifamily business?
One of the most challenging parts, and there's many challenging parts, so it's really hard to pinpoint just one as the most. But one of the challenging is the whole back office side of things. You see, so we've got operations in house, and a lot of what operations is accounting. Accounting on operations is a big component, and you're going to spend a lot of time reporting. And sure, you can outsource a lot of that stuff, but still, it's a constant rub. And so making sure that the back office is growing proportionally with the front office, with the deal count is key. I see a lot of guys they'll grow these massive portfolios very, very quickly. They'll grow 5,000, 10,000 units in 5-year period. And that's great, on paper. Congratulations, you do that. But you've just got to know that their life must be just absolute miserable or just hell, because there's so many growing pains that you have that, as you get more and more units, particularly when you're owner managing, as you get more and more units, you've got to hire regionals, senior regionals, superintendents, et cetera, that you just don't realize or you're not aware of as you're growing. And so that's for us, we've been growing very methodically. Probably our plan is just do 4 or 5 deals a year and then hire people to backfill as we need be. And then trying to stay as lean as possible and outsource where it makes sense to outsource, and then use technology where it makes sense to use technology to keep us lean and mean and not get overburdened. And I think that's what you see with a lot of these older manager companies is, they were doing things the old way and how they've been growing. And it's always been a very labor intensive industry. And now with all the new technologies they have, you're able to really streamline that a lot. And so it's just finding that right combination of the old with the new as you grow, so you can take advantage of that.
Is there a particular percentage that you'd like to keep overhead under?
No, there's not a real kind of percentage per se that we're looking at to keep overhead under. It's really about kind of unit count and time, So as you see people unable to meet their day-to-day deliverables as VPs and leaders are unable to achieve their different jobs and produce results as they previously were because they're just so busy, then it's probably time you hire somebody. And so that's where we're all reluctant to hire, because when you hire, it means less money that goes to the top and it gets to disperse throughout the company. So, and plus it's a cultural thing as well. Hiring's a big deal. And when you hire somebody, it's like bringing somebody new to the family, especially on the corporate side. And so we're very protective to be careful about who we hire.
One of the last questions that I had was I saw that you're managing other people's properties as well, and strictly from a management perspective. What's the reasoning if you're able to develop these properties, or if you're able to fix them up? Why also have management in your portfolio?
Yeah, well, we also do construction for others as well. So we have outsourced construction. We'll do fee managed property management. We also do outsource asset management. So basically what you're doing when you co-GP a deal is you're outsourcing. And so the reason for that is it's just business sense. I mean, you've got the ability, you got the skill set, people are willing to pay for your service. So why not? So we've been very heavy on the property management side from the beginning. Whenever we partnered, so my partners are myself, Carrie Brenneman and Deborah Newsom. Both have been doing property management for 30 years. So it was just myself and them two. I've been doing this for 10 years. Very heavy on the property management side. It just made sense that we were to outsource some of that experience because we just had this depth of knowledge on the fee management side. And then that's what they were doing before we merged, is they were an independent fee management company. So it just made sense. Well, let's just go ahead and outsource. It gives us access to other markets, that allows us to now buy in markets where we currently aren't, just by fee managing other people's deals as an initial base. And then we'll go in and buy something as well there. And so that's the reason for doing fee management. If I didn't have them as partners, if it was just me, or if I was building my own manager company, say I was just hiring like an individual person and letting them build out the team, no, I probably wouldn't have outsourced fee management. I would have probably built out the team just big enough to handle my own properties. But that's not what happened in our case. In our case, we had taken over also. Whenever we merged together, it came with several fee managed deals already. So since we were already fee managing deals to begin with, it just made sense to go ahead and expand that offering. Plus, just so you're aware and your audience is aware, you can grow a fee manager company a lot faster than you can grow an owner manager company. You can pick up clients, 2 and 3 a month or faster. Versus the owner management, it's extremely difficult to acquire 2 and 3 a month. You got to have pretty big teams built out for that.
And with that fee management model, that's been allowing you to be able to acquire more properties and kind of expand your market reach.
Yeah, it's provided us ability to expand our market reach, to look at properties, like for example, Corpus, we're managing 3 properties out there that it would allow us to purchase a single property in Corpus, when if we weren't already there, maybe we wouldn't purchase that single property because if it's not big enough, if it's only 100 units or so, it doesn't make sense for us to have something so far away without any kind of other properties around it to support it from a regional manager perspective.
Right. And what's the next evolution of TriArc? Where are you going? Where do you see yourself right now as compared to where maybe other investors are to where you're going?
Development. So TriArc Development is the next company to come out. We already have 3 new developments in the works. One breaks ground later this year. We have 1 500-unit garden-style property that we're breaking ground on in December. And we have 2 mid-rises that are in pre-planning phases, about 300 units, 200 to 300 units each. And they break ground in 2023. So that's kind of where we're going. New developments been my focus as of lately. So I've let go of acquisitions. I'm now focused on new development and raising equity. And I like new development because it's a blank canvas, right? It's really all your creativity to determine what you want to do. And it really plays better into the 5 years I had at Exxon. So Exxon had this whole roadmap of how you get from point A to point Z, from initial concept to a completed LNG facility. And so I'm being able to apply a lot of those project management principles I learned and kind of develop our own roadmap as we go to new development, keep mentors and partners along the way to help us. I've got a co-GP on my first new development to help, so I've learned from that first deal. So I don't know how to do new development. So I'm go ahead and partner with somebody who's done this for 30 years. And I'm just sitting there with a notebook at every meeting, just jotting down, learning as much as I can, and doing it. And it's exciting because also I'm an engineer by trade. And so we're having a lot of meetings with engineers and architects, civil engineers, which is what my background is. So it's fun to be on the owner side, talking to other civil engineers and getting to use the same vernacular and terminology and whatnot that I did in college. And it's just a lot of fun.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Joseph, for taking the time to share your story. It's really inspiring, and I'm really excited to be able to see where you and TriArc are going. What's the best way if someone wants to be able to reach out, find out more, or partner with you guys? How can they connect?
The best way would be via, I guess our website has a lot of good resources to get in touch with us, and it would help us kind of channel which way you want to get in touch with. So www.triarcrep.com. That's TriArcrep.com. And otherwise, you can send me an email to the same info@triarcrep.com, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm at Joseph Bramante, and if you do reach out on LinkedIn, just let me know that you heard me here on this show, and be glad to reach back out and connect with you.
Definitely. And of course, I'll include everything, links in the show notes. But thank you so much, Joseph, for taking the time and sharing your success story. Until next time. All right.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you did, please go on over to iTunes and leave us a review, as that greatly supports the show. And if you'd like to be able to connect with John, the community, and I, then come and join us on our Facebook group, the Multifamily Success Network, where you can connect and make deals with other multifamily investors. Go to multifsuccess.com/community.